Imagine being trapped in your bedroom and hearing heavy, rhythmic scratching against the exterior wall. You look toward your second-story window, and a shadowed, wolf-like figure is standing upright on its hind legs, peering through the glass. This encounter was documented by the Martin family in 2006, occurring at their isolated farmhouse in Palmyra, Maine. The family moved there following a workplace accident. Eric Martin had spent 20 years at a paper mill before several slipped discs left him disabled and unable to work. Seeking a lower cost of living, the Martins relocated to a remote property in the Maine woods. We often view the wilderness as a scenic backdrop, but settling this far off the grid removes the standard protections of a modern neighborhood. The property sat at the end of a long access road, surrounded on all sides by dense forest. There were no nature trails or neighbors nearby, just hundreds of meters of unmapped timber and deep shadows. Eric was an experienced hunter, but his wife Shelley insisted on a strict rule: no firearms in the house. Eric complied, locking all his rifles in a heavy-duty case inside a barn located 20 meters away from the main porch. This distance meant that if anything emerged from the tree line, the family would be physically cut off from their only means of defense. The first anomalies appeared a year after the move. While sitting on their porch, Eric and Shelley watched pulsating lights moving deep within the forest, an area with no roads or navigable paths for vehicles. Months later, their daughter's boyfriend, Nathan, discovered a massive structure hidden in the woods. It was an intentionally built den made of heavy timber and matted moss, far larger than any typical animal nest. When Nathan leaned toward the entrance of the den, he heard a deep, guttural growl vibrating from the darkness inside. He and the family dogs fled the woods immediately. This culminated in a phenomenon known as the Oz effect. The constant hum of crickets, birds, and wind suddenly flatlined, leaving the property in a state of absolute unnatural silence. First, the pulsating lights, then the massive wooden den, and finally, the dead silence, indicated that something territorial was tracking the family's movements. One evening, months after the den was found, the silence returned while Eric and Shelley were having coffee on the porch. A low mist settled over the field, and every natural sound in the forest vanished. Eric described a sudden, overwhelming feeling of being targeted. He stood up and told Shelley they needed to go inside immediately, even though the field in front of them looked empty. Shelley turned on a high-powered flashlight and scanned the darkness. The beam revealed 5 massive figures standing in a row in the middle of the field. They were 8 feet tall and wolf-like, staring directly at the porch. Unlike wolves or bears that might be startled by the light, these creatures remained perfectly still, maintaining a fixed gaze on the family. The figures suddenly charged. They crossed the field with enough speed that Shelley couldn't keep the light on them. The family scrambled inside and locked every door and window on the ground floor. Eric realized his guns were still in the barn. He attempted to reach his truck to drive his family away, but as he approached the vehicle, one of the creatures stood on its hind legs right next to the driver's side door. Eric retreated back to the house as the group swarmed the gravel driveway. The family retreated to the master bedroom on the second floor. They pushed heavy furniture against the door and armed themselves with kitchen knives and a small wood axe, waiting in the dark. Soon, they heard the creatures jump onto the first-floor roof. From that vantage point, the creatures began pacing outside the bedroom, scratching at the siding and stopping to look through the upper-story glass. By moving from the gravel to the roof and specifically targeting the second-story windows, the creatures had bypassed the family's ground-floor barricades. The sounds on the roof continued until dawn. As the sun rose, the heavy footsteps finally moved off the house, and the family heard the creatures retreating into the trees. In the daylight, the family found the yard covered in massive footprints with distinct claw marks. They found tufts of thick, unknown hair caught on the fence posts and deep scratches on the front door. The siding near the second-story windows was covered in jagged gouges. The markings showed that the creatures hadn't just been looking in, they had been clawing at the structure of the house itself. The experience was so traumatic that the Martins sold the farm and moved shortly after. They have reported no similar encounters since leaving the property.
The farmhouse in Palmyra remains a reminder of how quickly the environment can change once we leave the safety of the grid. When the woods go silent, the rules of the wilderness are dictated by whatever is watching from the trees.